Sequence 1, Heads or Tails, by Charles Putschkin. It is past midnight on Mazuska Street in Stettin on New Year's Eve in 1967, and it has just started snowing. Marilla lets a coin toss decide whether she should wake up Vladek and tell him about the bed bugs who slobbered blood on the back of her shins and thighs, polka-dotting the white bed sheet under the gold brocade acanthus patterned blanket.
Heads is tell him, tails is mate I first take them,
she whispers and crosses herself in the dark. The rusty 2 gross aluminium coin bounces on the edge of the armrest and lands with a clamorous clonk on the pine wood floor, before it rolls under the antique camelback sofa that Mama bought a few days ago. Marilla bites down on her teeth and throws her head under the pillow.
Cholera,
she swears into the cushion.
Not again.
Vladek stirs on the emerald velvet chaise longue on the other side of the coffee table and rolls over on his stomach.
Heads,
says Heinrich.
hide,
says Babsha, thinks Marilla. Under the floorboards is where the girl had hidden when Mama pretended to be ill.
not again,
says Heinrich and recalls the stench in the girl's room, a warm and musty odor, sweet and sour at the same time, and then her face, blue and black of disease and terror, the mouth contorted in a silent scream. Carl chuckles, says
good luck,
and moves on to the next house. Since Grandpa Jaschek was sent to Germany 2 weeks ago, on business, Babsha always said the Wehrmacht had performed nightly searches of all the homes in Kalisz. Guided by faint reflections of moonlight in the framed concave portrait mirror above the Neptune television set, Marilla, angelic in her billowing white nightgown, tiptoes around the coffee table, past the armoire, towards the light switch next to the living room door. You must be as sick as a dog, do you hear me, Agnieszka? Says Babsha and grabs Mama's wrist so hard that she first whimpers and then howls. Or I will show you where lobsters spend their winters. On 1, 2, 3, the electric lights go on in the chandelier behind Marilla's tightly pressed eyes, setting off 1,000 tiny signal flares across the inside of her eyelids, like a flaming sun or a freshly cut grapefruit.
who goes there,
Sounds of fearless countertenor, sending a startled Marilla onto her knees with a shriek. As she opens her eyes on the brightly lit living room, she sees Vladek, bleary-eyed and ruffle-haired, posed heroically in white and straw-colored pajamas on top of the chaise longue. One foot sits on the sheet-covered base whilst the other is hooked around the backrest, and both hands are fixed above the shoulders in the leopard position, like Bruce Lee in the Green Hornet.
Vladek,
Marilla cries and gets up on her feet.
you scared me.
Perhaps a little disappointed to have mistaken his baby sister for a monster or an intruder, Vladek unfreezes with a sigh and collapses on the chaise longue with a loud thud. pulling the grey military wool blanket over his shoulders.
Marilka,
He complains.
stop fooling around. Who goes there?
Shouts Heinrich from the bottom of the candlelit staircase. Heavy footfalls reverberate through the floorboards and reach Agnieszka's naked and cold, sweaty feet as she shuts the bedroom door with a creak, leaps across the room and climbs into the mahogany four-poster bed. "It is just the girl, Herr Constable," says Babsha as calmly as she can, but Heinrich has heard it all before. The tremor, the cracked voices, the desperation, the lies. "I tell you, Herr Constable, she is very poorly. There is no need." Her face pale enough to evoke the death her daughter has been instructed to impersonate.
I'm not a constable, you mad hag.
His voice tired and full of trepidation. What if the girl really is ill? Leaning against the railing as he climbs the steps, he reaches for the aluminium flask inside his breast pocket. In Agnieszka's room, the flames flicker in the wall sconces, and from under the floorboards rises a quiet, ancient prayer on which glimmering specks of dust bounce and twirl. Agnieszka sits on her knees at the top of the bed, burrowed in a nest of pillows and blankets. Her hands cup her ears, her eyes are tightly shut and her back is erect and arched in the backward loop as if metal wires twist and pull around her tenuous spine. Her stomach cramping, her thighs shivering.
May the Lord make me immovable like Saint Lucy.
A warm puddle begins to form around her feet and knees. Marilla swiftly sashays back to the sofa on her tiptoes and drops to her knees and elbows. Vladek, who has tried to go back to sleep, opens his eyes with a thunderous groan.
Marilka, the lights.
He begins, before catching sight of the myriad, tiny, black bugs who flee towards the dark corners of Marilla's white, blood-stained sheet.
Yuck.
He gasps and lifts himself up by the back of his hands, swallowing hard on saliva that tastes of something toxic and oily, like diesel dust on a window ledge. Marilla is splayed across the floor and her face is planted at an angle so that she can see under the sofa.
Your legs.
He says, his mouth agape, and points at a fresh drop of blood that trickles down Marilla's left ankle. She pushes herself up on her knees and sighs.
I was going to tell you,
she whispers with her eyes fixed on the floor. A quiet whimper escapes her wiry throat.
but then my 2 gross coin got lost under the sofa.
Vladek nods and surveys Marilla's face with the searching eyes of a concerned priest.
I see.
He mumbles and rubs his grainy eyes with the heel of his hand. After a moment's thought, he gets up from the chaise longue and crawls in under the coffee table to look under the sofa. A spiral of silvery dust glimmers under the chandelier as it descends on Marilla's blonde, frizzy curls.
I can see it.
says Vladek with his chin against the grey flatweave rug.
But we won't reach it. We'll have to move the sofa.
Marilla looks at the polished surface of the coffee table top and folds her arms across her sunken chest.
But Vladek,
She whispers quietly.
what if there is someone there?
What's that noise?
Heinrich asks, holding a handkerchief to his mouth and nose.
What's that noise?
He repeats in a muffled voice and looks around the room with wild, fearful eyes. Babsha is frozen in the doorway, her pale gaze fixed on Mama, who whimpers and writhes under a pile of soggy blankets.
Herr Officer, I beg you.
She tries without hope.
The girl, she really is very sick. We mustn't.
Heinrich coughs through the handkerchief and then spits on the floor.
It's like
His voice trailing off as he searches for the right word.
a tapping.
He steps closer to the bed and appears to prick his ears. He looks at Mama with renewed suspicion and then at Babsha, before taking the handkerchief from his mouth.
You're not hiding someone in here, are you?
Babsha's knuckles are like skeletal shives. Mama is now quiet and motionless in the bed. Tap, tap, tap. Heinrich gets down on one knee, looks at the bed and then at Babsha. He points at the floor under the bed.
Down there.
He places his palms on the floor, leans his body forward and tilts his head to the side.
Heads,
Says Marilla's Vladek, diagonal against the face of the armrest, slides the sofa across the floor to reveal the aluminium 2 gross coin. Slightly out of breath, Vladek drops down on his knees next to Marilla, like during the Eucharistic prayer at Holy Mass on Sundays, and there they sit, without a word or prayer, and look at the floor, as Marilla, like so many times before, recalls a memory she's never had.
do you think there's someone down there?
She asks and looks at Vladek.
Under the coin.
Under the floor.
A drop of blood falls from Marilla's ankle and lands with a tap on the floor.
Maybe some are still hiding. Maybe they don't know the war is over. What if they need our help?
Marilka.
Says Vladek and begins to reach for the coin, but pauses halfway through the motion as a metallic clonk echoes through the hallway outside the living room.
What's that noise?
Says Marilla, wide-eyed and startled. Keys rattle in the lock, the door opens, and there is a loud crash, as if a tall tree has been felled right outside the living room door.
They're home.
Vladek whispers, but it is really a scream. He leaps onto his feet, jumps up on the chaise longue and wraps himself in the grey military blanket. Mama's voice, plaintive and admonishing, fills the hallway, only occasionally punctuated by Tatar's slumbering groans. Instead of following her brother's lead, Marilla, as before, tiptoes to the living room door, this time turning off the electric lights. Before she softly presses down on the door handle to crack it slightly ajar. At the bottom of the hallway, she sees Tatar, flat on his belly next to the shoe rack, fully booted and coated, a snowy festive cap still on his head and garlands around his neck. Mama's heels click against the stone tiles in the kitchen as her shadow, a bionic cocktail dress and beehive hair, bounces across the apartment from wall to wall, water in the kettle. The kettle on the hob, mugs from the cupboard to the kitchen table, vanishes momentarily as she pulls out a kitchen chair. Sits down, reappears on the wall as she grabs the pack of cigarettes on the kitchen counter, clicks her lighter, and then disappears, finally, as she sits back down and inhales, exhales, inhales. At the bottom of the hallway, under the dim, flickering light of the ceiling lamp, Tatar snores.
What are they doing?
Vladek whispers behind her. Marilla slowly pushes the door shut and tiptoes back to the center of the room.
Hey,
She says, and pokes Vladek on the shoulder.
make some space.
Sequence 1, Heads or Tails, by Charlie Putschkin.